All right, well, thank you everyone for joining us. I'm Melissa, I'm the Executive Director at the Wisconsin Museum of Quilts and Fiber Arts. And our topic today is Artists in the Pandemic. And I am joined today by three wonderful individuals who have graciously agreed to discuss this topic with us. So just as a quick round of introductions, Heidi Parkes is a decorated quilter and quilt instructor whose evocative quilts utilize textiles from domestic culture, fashion, family heirlooms, scavenged prints. These cloths are often beset with hand stitching that functions as a layer of drawing on the quilt surface. So thank you for joining us, Heidi. Angela Johnson is the director of the Wisconsin Regional Art Program and Visual Arts. And I'll let her talk a little bit more about RAP itself, but she is an award-winning artist who has worked in formal and informal learning environments and is involved in community arts and has shown her work both nationally and locally. And then Ann Katz is the executive director of Arts Wisconsin. And again, I'll let Ann talk a little bit more about what Arts Wisconsin is and what they do. So Ann has been involved with circuses, playwrights organizations, theater companies, press agents, music festivals, family theater performances, and community concerts over the course of her 30+ year career as a performer and activist for community and creativity. So it's an eclectic group that we have today and a fun one. So I'm really looking forward to our conversation today. As a reminder to those of you that are tuning in today, the Wisconsin Museum of Quilts and Fiber Arts does offer these programs as a free program on Friday. We want you to tune in, we want you to share. We will record this and upload it to the museum's YouTube channel. So if you miss anything, you can always watch it again. We are also live streaming it to Facebook. If you have questions, please feel free to use that, and you're on Zoom, please feel free to use the chat feature. We are monitoring the questions. If you're watching us on Zoom, we are monitoring Zoom as well, or I'm sorry, we are monitoring Facebook as well. So if you're watching us on Facebook, feel free to post the questions in there and we will get to your questions too. So let's get started, ladies. So I gave a real brief introduction for each of you, but why don't each of you tell us a little bit more about yourselves, about RAP, about Arts Wisconsin, and what's more normal and usual, not during a pandemic.
Okay, Angela, you first.
All right, I'm happy to start. The Wisconsin Regional Art Program is an 80-year-old program that was started in 1940 by John Stuart Curry. He was a regionalist painter who came in as an artist in residence through the School of Agriculture at UW-Madison. And the program started out as a rural arts program that then turned into a regional arts program. Today, what it looked like pre-pandemic is we had 20+ regional exhibitions that would happen across the state of Wisconsin. I would work with volunteer coordinators from around the state to put together an educational talk, workshop, demo. A wonderful exhibition would happen. RAP's audience is non-professional artists across the state, and those who at the exhibitions receive a state award are invited to show their work at our statewide conference that usually happens either at UW-Madison at the Pyle Center or up at the Center for Visual Arts in Wausau. I work with a friends group, the Association of Wisconsin Artists, formerly known as WRAA, and they produce a beautiful color catalog from the exhibition, and they also fundraise over $5,000 worth of cash prizes that happen at the state conference, which happens annually every September. Quick plug, it's in 2 weeks. And I'll talk more about post-pandemic in a bit, but I'll stop there.
Well, it's good that you started, Angela, because I can build on what you said. So Arts Wisconsin is the state's community cultural development organization. We're all about the arts for everyone, everywhere in the state, and about the arts and creativity as essential to Wisconsin's economic vitality, education for the 21st century, healthy communities, and engaged residents. So that's our mantra. We build on the legacy mentioned by Angela, with John Stewart Curry as the first artist in residence in any land-grant university in the country, as a result of Professor Robert Gard's work to really grow the arts around the state and make opportunities available to everyone everywhere. And Wisconsin has a long history of the arts springing from the grassroots and people really embracing that. It has to do with the Wisconsin idea, our progressive values and traditions. And so Robert Gard was a professor who went around the state helping farmers write poetry and helping artists make art, no matter what they wanted to do and whether they called themselves artists or not. So Angela and I we're both carrying on that tradition that Wisconsin is that makes Wisconsin so special. So we are not a producing or presenting organization. We do conferences, workshops, we lobby the legislature, we help people be leaders in their communities. We speak up about the arts and creativity everywhere we can, and to help everyone understand that it's really the resource for the 21st century, and especially right now that creativity is essential to move us forward, to get us out of here. So, before the pandemic, things are in some ways completely different and in some ways very much the same. We just connect in a different kind of way with Zoom, and I have to apologize for my camera, which is a little fuzzy these days, but that's what I have in terms of technology. So I've been everywhere in the state over the 25 plus years that I've been doing this job. So if you want to know where the best pie and ice cream is, anywhere I can tell you, local food, local art, it's all connected. But I know, and I have seen, and I really embrace the fact that there's creativity everywhere in the state, and our job is to help people make that happen and to celebrate it.
Okay, and then I have a PowerPoint to share to explain a little bit about what I do under normal circumstances.
Whatever that means.
Totally different from the latter. So I am a quilter, and this is an example of a quilt. This is one that I made for a class that I was going to teach in Denver with the Modern Quilt Guild. They normally do QuiltCon every February, and they were just about to branch out to do something that wasn't their annual February conference. So we were going to do a hand-pieced quilt top in a day. This is a quilt top that I pieced by hand in 3 hours, and that was going to model what we could do as a class in 6 hours. I also
that's nice.
Had the very special occasion to travel to India this last September, and I made a quilt while I was traveling to document that travel. And so the quilt and getting to travel and work on it was special. It was scheduled for an exhibition at the Wisconsin Museum of Quilts and Fiber Art, and that's been postponed. So I will be exhibiting eventually, but didn't do it back in April. And one of the things,
it's still going to happen.
It's still going to happen though, just later. So one of the things that I think I'm known for, apart from hand piecing, is having a lot of visible knots. So this is an example of that on a quilt surface. This is a quilt top that I made to get ready to teach a retreat in France. I was going to be there in June, and we were going to learn about natural dye and go to the market and buy like lace and vintage fabrics and piece them together in the evenings while we drank wine. And it was just going to be like really fun, and postponed, hopefully maybe 2022 that will be able to happen. And so this is an example of how I post things on my website and things that are not happening workshop-wise. I generally do a lot on Instagram, and so luckily that is something that's maintained pretty similar, but Instagram's been very important for me pre-pandemic for getting the word out about workshops and showing what I do. oh, this one's maybe not in the right place. I've done a lot more YouTube videos lately, but this is an example of me lecturing. This was for a show in New York City, and I was lecturing there. And I've done exhibitions. This is an exhibition in Milwaukee where I had people come to an art gallery and we mingled. And this is me at QuiltCon with one of my quilts. So a lot of traveling and sewing and teaching and lecturing and engaging with people was an important part of my work pre-pandemic.
You know, Heidi, as you've alluded to already, and actually all three of you have, we know things have changed. So I also know all three of you aren't just artists yourselves. All three of you are also working with a lot of different artists, whether it's collaboratively or, you know, as a way to foster or promote other artists. So are there trends that you're seeing within the arts? Are there trends that you're seeing because of COVID and because of the pandemic?
Angela, you're first roll on now.
I was gonna say, any of you can jump in.
You don't have to go first though, Angela.
In several of the exhibitions that we've moved online for the RAP regional shows, I've noticed COVID shows up as a topic in some of the works, whether it's portraits with people wearing masks. There's one painting I'm recalling from a few months ago where an individual was masked with sunglasses, and you could see a cemetery with tombstones in the reflection of the sunglasses. So trends that I've seen over the last several exhibitions, and just with art groups I'm a part of too, that it's become part of the language that folks are talking about. It's among us and part of daily life. So it makes sense that it would come out in artistic expression.
Sorry, my phone is ringing, but I'll speak loudly. I guess I'll say that certainly creativity, as I said, creativity is what we need to move us out of this moment in time and keep us moving forward. And whatever comes after this, or as it eases, is going to be very much influenced by COVID. And through it all, you know, what we're seeing is that people are, whatever art form someone is involved with, and whether they're a professional or a not professional artist, I won't say amateur, but someone who doesn't necessarily make their living as an artist, everyone is trying to figure out how to exhibit in a world that is totally changed on the screen. Everyone is figuring out how to monetize that. If you are a person who makes your living through the arts, then how do you actually charge for the services that you're providing in a way that will keep you going? People are putting together ways to make a living and ways to keep going in ways that they never thought that they didn't even know they would have to ever think about. And so those are the changes. I mean, those are the evolutions. It's really an evolution, and it's a process. Because when 6 months ago, when everything started to shut down, we thought, oh, well, I had one summer theater person say, well, this is worrisome, but you know, we'll be fine by the summer, I'm sure. And now they're trying to figure out how to do performances online and make some money at it. So we are forever changed, I'd say, but we don't even know what that means.
Yeah. Yeah, so in terms of trends, I see a question from my friend Susan, and she's talking about, you know, the bad side, which was highlighted a little bit just now, but yeah, there's definitely an upside. She knows my passion for sleeping in. Like, I woke up early to be here at noon. So yeah, there are a lot of upsides, and we'll be touching on a little bit of that. And I would say, just in terms of trends, I've seen so much happening online that I find really exciting. Just a couple days ago, I was on a Zoom meeting about how we can do some fundraising and stuff in the next couple months. And to be able to log on and have about 90 women gather and brainstorm and discuss things. And they're these just incredible powerhouses in the industry. Like my jaw was on the floor, like, oh, I'm on a Zoom with like all these people who I really respect and love. That, you know, we wouldn't have probably had the idea to even do that had the pandemic not happened. So there's a real familiarity coming up with Zoom and the idea that you can just easily get together with other creatives and it doesn't matter so much that you don't live together anymore. So that kind of Zoom gathering to talk amongst other fellow professionals, I think is really exciting and such a big upside and a huge trend that I've noticed. I've also seen a trend in teaching workshops on Zoom, and I was able to help cultivate that. I taught 2 workshops on how to teach creative workshops on Zoom. So it was amazing to get to share with some of my peers in the quilting world and discuss, like, you could do a PowerPoint or a video and a camera from above, and you could have like better lighting and the camera in front of you instead of below, or, you know, angled funny, and just all of that, figuring out how do you teach a good class on Zoom. And it's been really amazing to see the differences within that trend. I personally have gone for class sizes that are smaller than normal. So I usually max out at 10 and we have a very intimate conversation. Classes are the same length that they normally would be. It's a 6-hour day. And there's lots of discussing and one-on-one time. And I find it really amazing then that everyone else gets to listen in on the one-on-one time that I have with other people. So they can be quilting and working on their piece, but then they get to hear those intimate conversations where I ask questions and push people a little deeper. But on the other side of the spectrum, I've seen people like Lynnwood is especially just in my radar. And she's been teaching Zoom classes to 75 people at a time. And the price is then incredibly affordable. So people who might not be able to take a workshop have access to that. And she has like she just looks like an airplane pilot with her headset, and she's so in control and command when she's teaching. And that kind of shift in access is exciting to see in the trend as well. Even like my classes, I've less students, but the price is kind of similar to a local class. But for a lot of people, the classes aren't local. So the hotel cost and the travel expense isn't there anymore. And so even for a class like mine, that's maybe on the higher range of Zoom classes, it's much more affordable than what it would have been previously. So those. Oh, and then the last COVID trend I would say is online exhibition rooms. So I get email newsletters from galleries a lot, and I like to check out galleries and go to openings. And now they have these online exhibition rooms where they have things like the dimensions and the price listed, whereas normally you have to go to the gallery to find out what the price of art is. Like the craft versus art worlds are super different that way. And so like the fine art, you normally never have access to the price. And in the craft world, you always have access to the price and the shopping cart. And so that's getting a little blurrier, which is sort of interesting to see and exciting. You know, for the galleries that I love, for example, that are in Chicago, I used to live there, and now I don't have to drive down to find out what's going on. I can go to the online exhibition room.
Now, all 3 of you are artists in different ways. So, I mean, you all work with artists, but you're all also artists yourselves. So how has the pandemic influenced your work? You know, Angela, you alluded to some of what you're seeing in other artists' work, but what about for the 3 of you?
Yeah, I'm happy to start again since I was volunteered the last. I don't have examples here to show. I'm not at home, but my brain space really wasn't in a place where I had like long concentrated periods of time when the pandemic started. It was, 20 minutes might have been like really long for me to concentrate. So I started making little miniature books, and I started marbleizing watercolor paper using shaving cream and inks, then moving on to Japanese rice paper. And I was calling them my oh, I had a catchy phrase for it. Pandemic creations is what's coming to mind now, but I had a catchier phrase. It'll come to me as soon as we like log off. And the idea was I was using these Japanese inks and rice paper, and the idea that we have no control. We don't know what's happening next, what's coming. But with the colors, I would swirl into the water and use my sticks to swirl around. You can still get something really beautiful and unexpected, kind of from the chaos and moving and swirling. So I've probably made 25 of those and have matted them, and I've made a bunch of miniature books and big books. That's kind of where I'm at. Again, something that I can do in, you know, my concentration might be up to like 30 minutes at a time now working on something, but yeah.
Now, Angela, pre-pandemic, would you have been more focused? So like longer stretches where you're working on it? Is that what I mean, why you were trying to find something?
I'd like to say yes. You know, I might go into like my studio for a few hours, but I guess I'm thinking like early on in the pandemic, like mid-March, April, it was just sort of like, it probably didn't help that I was listening to podcasts on the pandemic and the Spanish flu. So maybe admittedly, like I was causing my own lack of concentration.
Torturing yourself.
I now try to listen to like early radio, jazz music, and like, you know.
Don't listen to any political podcasts.
Duly noted.
I'll say that I am not a visual artist. I am a singer and a performer by training and inclination. My career goal many, many years ago was to be a big Broadway star. And I kind of transmogrified into being a community activist, which I didn't even know existed when I wanted to be a big Broadway star. So I get to sing around town every once in a while. Alas, there was a concert that was going to be on April 18th that was canceled, and there aren't any plans to reschedule that anytime soon. I've been really interested in what I see online about how to sing together again in any sort of way and when that might happen, because of course that transmission that is one of the main ways that the virus can be transmitted is by people singing. And so one of the creative things that I'm seeing and learning about and haven't been involved with, but I would like to try, is people doing virtual choirs. There's certainly been a lot of sort of outdoor performance where people who are not necessarily in the same pod rehearse in a physically distant kind of way. I won't say socially distant because we're all still being social, but physically. And then they do a performance in a physically distant kind of way for their neighbors and, people outside. And I will say personally that my husband and I present house concerts, which I sing at every once in a while, but we bring people in from Madison and from around the world, actually. And we have canceled so far 5 concerts this year, unfortunately, but we're going to try an outdoor house concert at the end of September, where one of the artists that we were supposed to have tonight is going to come, and we're going to do an outdoor thing in our backyard. So, again, as we've all said, people have to express themselves. They have to make music. They have to make art. We can't stop it. You can't stop that creative spirit. So personally, I still get to sing around the house and in a global way, watching how people are figuring out ways to do it until such time as we can come together, because of course, nothing replaces live human connection. I mean, that's part of the fascinating thing about this, which we will use in some way. I don't know how, but we will continue to use it as we get out of this moment in time. So that keeps me going.
So I've got another PowerPoint to share for this one. And the way that it's affected my work has been really like kind of exciting, actually. I was in sort of a 3-week depression as I kept canceling everything that I was excited for. And I think I was especially depressed about the time that I spent planning it and doing the contracts and writing blurbs and advertising. And I feel like, oh, I can never get that time back. And I could have been quilting if only I had like known. So I spent about, I would say kind of similar to Angela, I spent like 3 weeks just quilting, saying like, I'm gonna make something that no one can take away from me. And then I started to plan and do more. And partly I had some mending commissions that had built up that I had been a little bit too busy to work on for a couple months. And so this is my website again, where I take mending commissions. And that's been a really great bigger part of my work lately, I think, because people are slowing down and they've got time to do some spring cleaning and organizing. So I've gotten more than normal mending commissions coming in. I also did this scavenger hunt quilt that like was already scheduled for March anyways, to do a quilt along, but the quilt along went really well, and I did much more involved, much more exciting videos for that than I would have done under normal circumstances. So it was really fun to get to work with everybody online during doing that quilt along. And now I've got another quilt along that I'm going to do in October for a new quilt pattern. So I think that kind of community is extra exciting. And then here I am teaching a workshop online, and everyone's hand piecing quilt tops together. And then this one is more of a framed quilt project that we did where we're making a stretched canvas quilt. So that was wonderful to get to work on with students on Zoom. And these are some of the workshops that I have available now online for selling and teaching. And like the last time that I taught this whole cloth hand piecing class, it sold out and we had an amazing time. So that's been really exciting to work on. And I've been doing a lot of like videos and showing things. So this is an example of just me showing things with that camera above to show what's happening in my sewing.
That's cool.
It's been really fun. Like I didn't know I could make such a good video. And then the last thing that I'm going to share is this quilt top that I made. I decided to be part of the 100 Days project, which started on April 7th. And I added to this quilt top a little bit every day. And part of what was exciting about it was that commitment to doing a little bit of work over time. And it didn't have to be about COVID every day, but it was more about like, what am I drawn to each day? What's interesting to work on? What's happening? And partly it was just like I had to do a demo for a class I was teaching online. So that demo then became part of the quilt top. And now it's really great to be able to look back and see that document. This is just how I do my corners neatly. To see that document over time of how my quilt top evolved and how I experienced that first 100 days of being in quarantine. And I find that you know, like was mentioned earlier, has been a real trend, is seeing people make art that is about this moment and trying to document it while we're in it.
Heidi, you just gave me the perfect segue to my next question. So one of the other things, I mean, while we're in the midst of this health pandemic, there's also been a great deal of social change that's going on. And especially this year, you can't really separate, or it's very difficult to separate one from the other. And so we're seeing a lot of things, particularly around racial equity. What are the three of you seeing related to the Black Lives Matter movement, other working with artists or artists of color trying to express themselves? What sorts of trends are you seeing there? What sorts of things and activities are you participating in? What sorts of things are you seeing?
I can go first, Angela, if you want.
Yeah.
You know, again, this is part of the process and the evolution and this incredible moment in time that the pandemic has revealed the pandemic and everything around it has revealed a lot of things that we knew to be true, but we didn't really have, some of us felt that we didn't have to think about them, or just, it wasn't kind of right in our faces. And the issue of equity, access, and inclusion is one of those societal issues that we now are, we all are obligated to be part of. And just in terms of the art that's being created, when you look at the murals that are being done on the boarded up plywood stores on State Street in Madison or in Kenosha, or and the interesting political discussion about that, about who gets to do the art and whose art should be featured and how the art happens, and then what happens after when the plywood is taken down, and what you do with that and how you document this historical moment in time. That's just one part of the whole conversation. But I think that certainly the arts industry and the nonprofit organizations and just the general structure is really being forced to take a long overdue and much needed hard look at itself about what we look like, who participates, how people participate, just all of those questions. They're all questions right now. Don't have a lot of answers. One thing I will say is that I saw an article by an art museum director in Mississippi, and I will see if I can find this and post it, but I'll send it to you, Melissa, afterwards if I can't find it now, about the whole issue of what a museum is and whether it's important to have a museum that people go into and view art. I don't mean that facetiously, but is that something that we need in a world where everything is online and things cost money to go into a building? And I mean, I don't even know how to, I have to think about that article and the question she brought up. She was really asking herself that question. And being in Mississippi as part of the mix, I just think we're having conversations that, again, we didn't know we had to have, or we didn't have to think about quite as much, or whatever. In terms of societal change, this is all very profound, and each of us brings our own viewpoint to the table, and hopefully we will all keep learning.
I will say that Black Lives Matter artwork has also shown up a lot. I'm thinking of a handful of pieces of artwork that are in our online state exhibition now, happening in a few weeks, that have work directly related to the topic, which is work we've had before, but I've seen it more, like Anne said, it's more, something that we thought about certainly before, but now is, more at the forefront. So definitely seen more artwork in that regards.
Yeah, I would say just getting ready for this webinar, like the question that made me sort of sweaty in the middle of the night was this one, and how to approach it. I feel like especially initially, it felt to me like, yes, of course, Black Lives Matter, and we are not valuing them culturally the way that we should be. And then as things progressed, it started to be very complicated. And so as a professional who's an artist, who's trying to make a living, and most of that happens online, there have really been a lot of things that have been very complicated and hard to navigate. And so, for me, things were already complicated with all of my work being gone. And my main way to advertise that was Instagram. And then suddenly Instagram was like a very tricky place for a while. And if you posted something, then there was a lot of extra stuff to be read into it. And so it was like, if I post Black Lives Matter, does that also mean defund the police? And does it also even then mean like F the police? And by saying one, does it automatically mean that I'm saying the other? And maybe that's not what I was intending my message to be. And then there was a whole issue with I would call it call out culture, because I heard a podcast years ago from Invisibilia about that. And this idea of people policing each other on social media. And now that seems to be like a Republican thing, if you even mention that. And so then that becomes challenging. But I really felt like, wow, people are really attacking each other, and everyone's feeling exhausted, especially my Black artist creative friends were feeling like the most tired of everyone. But it was this sense that silence is violence. So if you don't post anything, you're complicit and part of the problem. But then if you do post something a little bit awkwardly in an effort to get out there, then it was very easy to be accused of colonialism or being paternalism. And like there were so many things that it was a really fine line of navigating. How do you say something in a way that won't make everyone mad, because this is a business? But seeing posts from people saying, I see the businesses that aren't posting anything right now, and I'm going to make sure I don't spend money with them, just was very challenging as an artist professional. And so I'm trying to keep my opinions out of it more and just talk about it from this lens of creative person, that there was so much that was really difficult, and that there were times when it was just inappropriate to post about anything on Instagram at all. And so then I didn't advertise certain classes, and they ran with really low numbers, because I just felt like I don't know how to make a post that is about my class. And then and then a very dear friend of mine was like, Heidi, you made a post that was advertising your class and supporting something, and that's also not good. And I was like, oh my God, how do I, and then you get that sweaty thing that Brene Brown talks about. And Brene Brown for me has been someone who's, in the midst of that, been a little bit of like, is my compass on track? Where am I going? And so I really have clung to her phrase that I'm not here to be right, but I'm here to get it right. And so that knowledge that if I do mess up in my attempts to be compassionate and kind and caring and change, that admitting that and trying to find a way to move forward. And also hopefully as I interact with other people and I see them maybe fumble as they're trying to navigate this new thing, as we're already navigating the pandemic, if I can remember like that they also are hopefully, just trying to get it right, and that there are really polite, compassionate ways to help them get it more right, instead of ways that feel judgmental, that get their defenses up. That's been, I think, hopefully a really, one of the biggest lessons that I've had is just how to navigate that with gentleness and compassion, and to, how to navigate that with gentleness and compassion has been big for me.
Well, I think that's something, everybody is trying to figure out. I mean, regardless of exactly, all four of us have very different roles. They obviously overlap at times, but just trying to figure out the best way to get different points across, to share views, to try to build those sort of collaborations and those partnerships, and have those conversations, many of which are really, really hard conversations. It doesn't mean that they're not valuable, but I think your emphasis on, the kindness, the compassion, if somebody's willing to have these conversations, the last thing you want to do is shut them down just because they don't do it the right way. So, trying to do this particularly with artists, I mean, it's a wonderful way. So many artists are much more eloquent with their work than they are necessarily with, their words.
Yeah, we're not.
Depends on the artist. I mean, if they're a writer or something like that, obviously they're going to be a lot more eloquent with their writing.
Mm-hmm.
But with you know, the visual artists, you know, the most eloquent way that they can speak is through their work sometimes. And so it could be, you know, somebody trying to express themselves verbally could be a little bit clumsy. It doesn't mean that they don't care. It doesn't mean that they're not still trying to do something. But I think your point is very well taken. And I think it's a great way to look at it. And kind of look at it more broadly. I think the other thing is making sure that we're forgiving ourselves too, when we do trip, when we do stumble.
Yeah.
So.
And just, you know, in talking to some of my friends, I feel like it's been extra helpful to say, like, maybe it is okay to be silent for 2 weeks and read a book or step back and to not like feel so beat up by that. You know, that call to like say something about it every day. And feeling, because my Instagram, I'm used to posting like very well thought out, very planned things. And so just like that sweaty feeling of posting something that I'm not, you know, that's not so well thought out is unfamiliar ground in that. And like one of my friends revealed to me recently that he didn't post anything for 2 whole weeks. And I was like, oh, I didn't even register that, because things like, you know, like maybe that microscope isn't quite so finely tuned on each of us anyways. And you know, really taking the time to do the work and read the books and listen to the podcasts and you know, and read the articles like what Anne was mentioning is very, very important.
Actually, can I add one more article that I will send, Melissa, I'll send to you, send to all of you. We all came out with, every arts organization out there came out with a statement of support in June, you know, after George Floyd was murdered, and very heartfelt. And the woman whose name is escaping me at the moment, I'm sorry, but she's the director of an organization called Women of Color in the Arts. She wrote a really, really good article that the headline was, "Enough already with the statements of support, arts organizations." And she made an excellent point about the fact that sometimes we should, as Heidi said, sometimes we should stop talking and listen and think about what we're saying and not feel that we have, check that off, made our statement of support. Now we can go back to the way things were, and we don't have to work so hard or think so hard. It's very profound. I will send it out, but we have a lot of thinking to do.
Yeah, very much so.
Now, shifting gears just a little bit, you know, Anne, I know that you've been doing a lot of work with Americans for the Arts and the Wisconsin Arts Board, specifically on some studies trying to gauge the pandemic's impact on artists. So would you be willing to share some of what you've actually seen, some of what you've learned regarding what data is telling us about how this is affecting the arts and the arts community?
Yes, very profound. So I'll just start quickly with what was before the pandemic. So on March 17th, right as the state was shutting down or had shut down, the U.S. Department of Commerce and the National Endowment for the Arts released their latest update on something called the Arts and Culture Satellite Production Account, which is a federal project to take a look at 35 different creative industries, independent artists, nonprofit organizations, media, design, architecture, things that the federal government identifies as creative, and they put it into a big computer system and they come out with the economic impact. And those numbers on March 17th, which were from 2017, but they keep rising, were that nationally it was an $877 billion economic impact. And in Wisconsin, it was a 10.1 billion with a B, economic impact, and over 96,000 jobs in Wisconsin, which is more jobs than the beer, biotech, and papermaking industries in this state. So it's like, whoa, that's great. Now, Americans, so that's still out there, that there's this huge economic impact to go along with the stories of personal transformation, which of course is why the arts are important in general, or at the heart. Now we have information from Americans for the Arts, which has been tracking the nonprofit sector and independent artists, self-employed artists like Heidi, and lots of other people. And for the nonprofit sector, it's the impact, the negative impact is already over $10 billion nationally. And in Wisconsin, it's up to almost $40 million. And that's before the summer revenue that you've lost is put into the computer system. And so those are statistics that we're using to make the case that not only does it affect an independent, a person who's working, a person who is a self-employed artist who pays taxes, you know, pays a mortgage or rent, is a member of the community, that person's business is affected. And then when you talk about a larger art fair or summer theater festival or music festival, something like, you know, any of the art fairs in Wisconsin, people come not only spend money buying art from working artists, but they spend money on hotels and gas and restaurants and shopping and all the other things that are ancillary to, or, you know, part of, excuse me, the experience that a community comes to depend on. And so we have Americans for the Arts information. The Wisconsin Policy Forum just did a big study, just looking at a pretty small, not a small slice, but just looking at what the effect was. And they took a lot, they used a lot of that Americans for the Arts and the Department of Commerce information, and, you know, sort of made the case that things are dire unless, as this goes on. And we did some webinars on that, and we're going to keep exploring all of that data. So the good news is that we're not sitting around and just waiting for things to happen, right? So one of the pieces of good news is that yesterday, Governor Evers and the Department of Administration announced a $5 million grant program for nonprofits, but still the money will be spread around the state. That is coming from CARES Act money. So that's great. Thank you, Governor Evers and Department of Administration. So that will be a way for arts businesses to have some money to keep going and figure out how they keep the lights on and do some programming as things keep going on. There are a lot of other efforts out there with visual and performing arts in terms of federal money. The CARES Act, you know, CARES Act money had money for businesses, including arts businesses, and the fact that self-employed people, including self-employed artists, were able to get unemployment money for the first time ever, which of course it has been rife with bureaucracy and antiquated computer systems trying to deal with new ways of doing things. Yes, and I'm sure Heidi and lots of people she knows and people that Angela know have lots of those stories. But the fact is that there is, even though it's not enough, and we keep working for more, there's a lot of advocacy going on around about supporting the arts sector in just like we would support any other sector. We bail out the airlines, we bail out the hotels, we bail out the restaurants. And I'm not talking about bailing out, I'm talking about helping people and businesses along in a time when they need it, when we need it. And so there's a lot of advocacy going on. People are really working hard, and I can talk about Arts Vote after Angela and Heidi go on, but I'll talk about that in a minute.
And then,
anybody else?
I mean,
Should we?
Angela, Heidi.
Can I talk about Arts Vote for a minute? I'll just finish up my piece.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's see if I can share this. Heidi, this is gonna work, right?
Yeah.
So Arts Vote, which you see on the screen now, and I'm gonna just scroll through it quickly. So Americans for the Arts is working on getting people, we're all working on getting people to vote. Whatever your political party, voting is a part of our democratic process. And so Americans for the Arts has been working with Shepard Fairey, who did the Obama posters, to do images around creativity and voting. And you can see that there's this website with posters and things like that. We've also got a whole pledge to vote process, which is, again, we're really promoting the idea that everybody needs to get involved and everybody has the right to vote if you're a citizen of this country. So that's a big part of our advocacy right now. Okay.
That's beautiful imagery. I hadn't seen his.
Yeah, I'll send a lot of links to Melissa so she can get them out to people.
Wonderful.
And then, I mean, Heidi, Angela, have you guys seen or been doing, have you participated in any of the studies like that? Have you actually, I mean, Heidi as an artist, have you actually taken some of those and put your input into those? Angela, same thing. Have you guys been doing anything like that? And if so, I mean, why did you choose to do so? Or why didn't you? And what sorts of things have you two learned?
I get emails regularly from Polly Morris because I live in Milwaukee, and she's just like, you know, the godmother of arts in our
She's
city.
a goddess.
Yeah. And so I really appreciate being kept up to date by her. And so sometimes she'll send links for surveys and things like that, and I will participate. And also the very beginning of the pandemic, when I was in that only quilting all the time phase, I was quilting and I joined a Zoom conversation on that subject, and it was really uplifting. It helped me think about things in such a different way, and it was just fellow artists getting together to talk about the community. And yeah, so I feel really grateful about getting to be impacted by that.
I've been a part of a couple art groups that we've just talked about arts and advocacy over Zoom.
Mm-hmm. Now, you know, again, what do you think the biggest challenges facing artists are right now? So, I mean, whether that's related to the pandemic, related to other things that are going on. So what do you see those biggest challenges actually being? And, you know, or Heidi, for you, what are the biggest challenges you're seeing that you're facing?
I think, you know, the thing that I get like Instagram DMs about the most and comments and things is just in struggling to still feel like the arts matter. That a lot of people have felt like, oh, my job isn't as important as other jobs. And that within the pandemic, like other things matter so much more than anything to do with art. And that for me, it's been really important to advocate for why art is so important. I was a high school art teacher for 9 years, and so I think it's like literally in my DNA to always remind people how the arts are important. And you know, just seeing that like deflation around like, oh, I can't make anything, or I don't feel like I don't see a reason to make anything is the biggest problem that I see. And I think some of my favorite responses to that and the things that I've put out there that have, you know, gotten real feedback about how it's encouraging is that I've never been in any other moment in my life where creative thinking has been more valuable to me. I think that the learning I did in college and the learning I've done since on how to be a creative problem solver and how to be like nimble and adaptable and able to see a new solution or a new way of doing something is so powerful. One of my really good friends, Bridget, she works in the design industry, and a lot of her coworkers who aren't designers, they had so much struggle, and a lot of them, like some of them even got furloughed and other things happening. And she said, like, in her business, that she's never felt more grateful for her art degree, and her ability to look at and being around people who don't have art degrees has made it so much clearer for her that, like, oh, wow, I know how to problem solve in ways that other people don't. So that I think is important. And then also I've seen so many incredible efforts to raise money, and also like the big Zoom thing I did recently was about getting out the vote as well. And it was just incredible to see creative people all in a big Zoom room together, problem solving about that. And also there's a lot of, I think, deep inner work that has to happen right now, and reflection, and really like looking into your heart and thinking, how can we be different, and how, you know, what's wrong with the way that things have been, because there are things that have been wrong with it, and how do you like digest complicated new concepts like that? I think, you know, like what Melissa said earlier, sometimes your brain can't do it and you need your hands and other body parts to get you there, and that art is such a powerful way to digest that. The same way that I feel like, you know, as an artist, it's been incredible to be able to help model wearing masks. Like my most successful YouTube video ever was on how to hand sew a mask, and like just helping to change the culture and be part of fashion. Like, and I feel like such an accidental fashion person, but with all the work I do with mending, and like I sewed my shirt that I'm wearing, and like that part of fashion and just getting people to accept a new way of looking is a really big part of the advocacy in the arts that I've noticed.
Well said. I mean, just to add to that, you know, again, people can't stop being creative. I think, especially as it gets colder in Wisconsin, I think we have all had such swings in our moods, and I've had a million moments where I've, you know, woken up and thought, I just can't get out of bed today. I just don't. There's nothing I can do. I give up. And then, you know, I think, okay, I have to get up, so I might as well try to do something. And I think we all are just, we're all trying to roll with whatever punches we get, and using being creative to get out of those moments. We can't help it. I have a great belief in, you know, sort of the power of creative work and creative thinking. And I think that we're just going to keep trying. We're all just going to keep trying and find inspiration where we can. And as Heidi said, whether it's you're sewing your own clothes and that is the way you express yourself, or you're working on getting out the vote, or you're raising money, any of that, we're all going to keep trying.
I think all of those things kind of forward focusing on creativity. Melissa, going back, you had asked about challenge facing artists. One thing I've been thinking about is technology is so amazing, and the fact that we can be here right now. But I think one thing too is the saturation of opportunities. There are just, it can be overwhelming, the plethora of offerings that of classes.
And the endless Zoom calls.
Zoom fatigue is a real, it's a real thing. I've worked with some coordinators when we moved our regional rap workshops online. I'm like, okay, well, we'll still do, you know, 12 to 4. And I'm like, 4 hours is like, you know, we're in a new world, you know, let's do maybe hour and a half. You know, people could even like turn off computer, leave for lunch, come back, and then critique in the afternoon. So we don't, you know, I think a challenge can be, you know, both challenge and a bonus is flexibility is key. You know, if there are things that worked from before, great. Otherwise, try some new things now. One very interesting challenge for the state conference for rap. Historically, it's been pretty much a one-day conference with our keynote. We have a gala that AWA, the Friends Group, puts on the night before. We have a nice luncheon, and then the afternoon award ceremony. And as important as the award ceremony is, no one wants to sit through a 2.5 hour PowerPoint award ceremony over Zoom. Again, as meaningful as it is after a long day. So it was really interesting challenge to figure out how can this look and be structured in a way that people will want to participate. And so we ended up doing 3 days. It'll be Friday, Saturday, Sunday, 3 workshops each day, an hour and a half with time in between, and folks can self-select if they want to do all 9 sessions. They get a discount. Keeping the sessions accessible, they're $10 a piece, tried advertising to schools, teachers. You know, students aren't in school, so some of these demos people could do later. They'll be recorded but live. So as Anne, as you said, you know, as winter approaches and our moods maybe kind of go down, hopefully these are things that people could do and redo, from creative art journaling to learning to do acrylic pours. I know I'm kind of going off a little bit from your question, Melissa, but this is, again, trying to take, you know, a bag of lemons and turn it into lemonade, trying to make it accessible and something that artists can kind of use and reuse later on. And another thing, not totally related to, but another challenge for artists is there's so much content out there that's free versus paid too. So signing up for workshops or finding out what, I recently sat in on a class this week that was amazing. It was a paid class that I sat down to do. I won't say where, but the first 30 minutes of the class, the instructor had us all go around and introduce all 28 of us, which felt like, if I'm already spending this much time, like I'd have rather dove into the content, not being unfriendly, not that I didn't want to get to know the other 27 people.
It's a lot of people.
A lot.
A lot of people.
That is a lot.
I just kind of think pre-planning and thoughtfully planning out to, you know, can be a challenge, because again, this is 6 months feels like a long time, but it's really not in the grand scheme of how long we've been operating in a new world that seems to change daily.
It's interesting, you know, each of you brought up both the challenges, but also, I mean, the perspective that you're bringing, all three of you are bringing, is very interesting to me, because each of you were answering, you know, the challenges, but all three of you turned it into, these are actually the opportunities. And I think looking at it that way, it's very much, I think, an artist mindset, because you're thinking about it in, okay, we're dealing with this is the reality we've got, what are we going to do about it? And Angela, your comment about, okay, we know we have lemons, let's make lemonade. There's, you know, looking at it and looking for those opportunities in that. And Heidi, to something that you had said when you were talking about people commenting or other artists commenting about not wanting to make or feeling discouraged, I couldn't help but flash back to the quarantine quilt project that we did. And so many, or even when we started these lunchtime chats, the comments that we got from everybody, so many people from so many artists, thank you for reminding me that I can still create. Thank you for reminding me that I'm still part of a community. And just something that simple that did kind of give them that extra little kind of kick to keep going, and to get them back and going, whether it's, you know, making a block for the quarantine quilt or something else, you know, or whether it was making masks and knowing that you're helping, you know, your local community or something. But
then the mask fatigue.
Yeah.
Oh, like I've never talked to such depressed people as people who have just made 300 masks, and they're like, I did a playful pause with the Makery organization, and some of the guests on there, when we just met for an hour to make like a 20-minute craft, and like they were literally crying because they'd been making so many masks. And yeah, it's so similar to that.
But you know, I think if we're doing that and then reminding yourself and kind of giving yourself permission to make, and knowing you don't have to, you're still allowed to do this. You're still allowed to find a way to express yourself. So believe it or not, our time is actually up, but I did want to ask one final question. And, you know, we've talked a lot about how this has been difficult on a lot of people, artists in particular. And you alluded to some of the different efforts that, advocacy efforts, the announcement that was just made yesterday with the funding that's now available as part of the, I think it's part of the We're All In program that originally wasn't even accessible to nonprofits originally. So
right. So this is yes, I should have mentioned that. This is the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation. Yep. This whole, we're all in this together. And yeah, they had for-profit money and now it's nonprofit money. So trying to
So
spread it around.
my final question is, I mean, final thoughts that each of you want to share, but also, you know, we have a group of people that are tuning in that like the arts. They wouldn't be here if they didn't. So what are ways that they can support the arts? What are ways that they can actually support artists in their communities within Wisconsin or wherever they happen to be?
Well, I'll start. That's what they can do. They can look. They can think about and pursue the artists that they like, and now everything is online, even if it wasn't before. And you know, there's nothing that replaces unique, authentic work or experiences. And so if you have a performer you like and that performer has a Venmo tip jar on their screen and an artist is selling work through their Instagram or website or however, invest in that art. That is, you know, that's one of the main ways to support the arts. And then of course, go to artswisconsin.org, and you know, we've got lots of ways that you can send messages to decision makers. And I'll of course end with my mantra: vote. That's the most important thing.
Yeah.
So absolutely vote. Support your local artists. You know, see if they're taking local, you know, offering art classes. Take them, buy art from them. I would say register for the Wisconsin Regional Artists Program Conference. The deadline is next Friday, September 11th. You can Google UW-Madison Rap. It'll take you up to the conference page. If you feel so inclined, you know, donate to your local organizations. Help support an artist with perhaps funding a project. And Heidi, I didn't mean to cut you off. I'll end there. So.
Oh yeah, no, not at all. Just thinking like, oh, maybe I shouldn't be last. So yeah, certainly, you know, purchasing my classes and taking a class from me, or purchasing an actual quilt. I just recently added some quilts to the shopping cart on my, speaking of like art versus craft, I had resisted the shopping cart, but so I added a couple things to the shopping cart that are actual art. And there's lots of other art on my website that if you email me, you can buy it right away. The price is listed. It's just not a shopping cart item. And there are so many other ways to support that aren't like direct money, because you can help spread the word and build engagement. So some incredible ways to support me is to like my posts on Instagram, or just to comment. Like, it's amazing how having comments on an Instagram post helps it trend more and get seen by more people. So to comment on a post, and then if it's a post that you like, to like put it in your stories or repost it. And you can do that for all artists or for the museum's Instagram page. But that kind of just getting it in front of people, helping them find more followers or people who are engaged, or, you know, if you know someone who might like that art, like, tag them in the comments so they see. But that, I think, is a really powerful way to help people. And all of the artists that I know that are online, they really deeply appreciate that kind of engagement.
Yeah, you know, supporting the institutions that make the arts happen, like the museum and like all of our organizations, and then the artists, the people that make the art. Those are the main things.
And
vote.
And vote. And
for everybody,
I say that a million times a day.
For everyone who is tuning in, I posted links. We posted links for some of the places actually that you guys were each talking about for Arts Wisconsin, for RAP, Heidi, your website. All of those websites are also on the museum's website. So if you go to the information about the program today, all of that information and links to each of those are actually on the museum's website too. I think we had them posted to social media. If not, we can get them posted to social media, but I think they're in the posts about it too. So if you do want to find out more, by all means, or register for the RAP program, you know, please do. It's one of the best ways to support the organizations and the artists is to do that sort of stuff. I mean, whether it's something as simple as liking or sharing on social media, like Heidi's alluding to, or, I mean, I know from the museum's experience, it's amazing how much that does. It bumps us up every time with how all of those algorithms work. So, and the same thing goes for, you know, RAP or an organization like Arts Wisconsin. They'll also say your advocacy does make a difference, whether it's voting or actually writing a letter to your local representatives, to the state representatives. The part of the message that came out about the funding that Anne was talking about that was just announced yesterday, part of the statement that was released is because of advocacy efforts, they know that this is something that's important and it was missing. And so it's shows and demonstrates that, you know, this might not have happened if not for this. So it's important that you're making your voices heard too. So, and check out our website, check out the museum's website.
Yes.
You know, log on to the different websites.
Can people still shop at the rummage? Is this like,
the rummage sale is going on today, and then the bag sale is tomorrow. So
I already bought 2 big bags of stuff at the rummage, and it's like really good stuff. So it's a good way to support the museum.
Yeah, fun things like that support. Again, I know we've gone over a little over time, but just wanted to thank each of you again for taking the time to chat. You know, this can be it's an important topic, but it's also can be a heavy one. But what I loved hearing is not just the, oh, it's so hard, but really the positivity that can come out of this and the opportunities that can come out of this, and even a conversation like this one. So that, you know, even though Heidi, obviously you and I knew each other, and you and I had emailed before, Angela, I got a chance to meet you. So, you know, looking for those silver linings with what everybody's going through. So again, thank you all for taking the time today. I really appreciate you spending part of an afternoon, and hope you visit soon.
Thanks all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
you.